Thanks, guys. Today, we're very excited to have an update from the Chief of Police for the town of East Hampton. A lot going on in our town. It's been a very challenging time. Here to update us is Chief of Police of East Hampton, Michael Sarlo. Michael, thank you for joining us on Facts at 5.
No problem. It's a pleasure to be
Great to
here.
see you.
I look forward to sharing some information and helping continue to communicate with the citizens in the community.
Great. Well, we spoke early on when this pandemic first hit. I want to just start there. I know there's been a lot of challenges and changes. Tell us how things are going with your police force. Even early on, I know there were questions of who tested positive. How is the force doing in terms of everything now?
Sure. So yeah, from the initial outset, obviously a lot of challenges, new protocols, new procedures, new safety guidelines, new screening, new sanitizing, very exhaustive planning and preparing for the proper PPE, the procedures in dealing with the public. Initially, we really had to get out in front of making sure that we protected the officers and the dispatchers and our civilian support staff so that we could continue to provide safety services to the community. We saw, Nassau County and NYPD saw immediate high spikes in positive cases among their officers. And with an agency our size, as small as we really are, if that happened here, we could have had some major struggles with still being able to provide safety to the community in response to all of the other services we provide other than just the COVID-19 related. So we were very fortunate. Only 2 of our 65 sworn police officers tested positive in the first 3 or 4 weeks of the pandemic back in March. Since then, through a Northwell Health project with the county, almost every single one of our sworn and civilian staff members has been tested in the last 3 or 4 weeks. We've had no other positive cases. So we feel very
That's
fortunate
great.
in that we've managed to, we have to protect our own people so that we can effectively protect the community. And that was the first step in that. And we're very happy with the way that went. So,
Great. That's
yeah,
great. Is the
yeah.
force routinely tested? How does that work?
Yes, moving forward, we'll see how the protocols change. But what
Okay.
happened was Northwell Health, in conjunction with the county, going back about 3 weeks ago, opened up walk-in testing for all law enforcement and emergency personnel. We were able to go to either
Great.
Riverhead or Suffolk Police Headquarters, fill out the paperwork ahead of time online, get
Yeah.
tested, and get the results back. And we're very thankful that we were able to do that. It just gave a lot of our officers a peace of mind, and it allowed us to continue doing what we were doing.
Let's talk about this past weekend, and obviously we are in the season. Today is June 1st. Memorial Day weekend, kind of a soft opening. There were a lot of questions about what beaches were going to be open, if you had a permit already, if you could renew it. Tell us the state of, I mean,
Sure.
I went to the beach this past weekend. I saw the keep your distance, 6 feet social distancing sign. I was in the Indian
Yeah.
Wells, and I saw that on the
Yeah.
lifeguard chair. But tell me what's going on. How was this weekend, and how do you see things going?
Okay, so we've put a townwide committee together with Parks and Recreation, the lifeguards, a town board member, myself, and we're really focusing in on how to safely allow beachgoers to still use our beaches and encourage social distancing and masks where appropriate. The governor's office and the county passed down some guidelines on how to safely and effectively open the beaches that we must present to them for approval in order to keep our beaches open. And I really want to thank John Ryan, our head lifeguard, and John Rooney from Parks and Recreation, along with Councilman David Lease. They put an exhaustive amount of time into this to make sure that we had the proper safety protocols in place. And to be honest, a lot of what they put forth, the county is using as their guidelines in their committee. So very proactive and very out in front of it on the town side. And again, Parks and Recreation with sanitizing the bathrooms on a regular basis, limiting the access to the bathrooms, but still keeping them open. And all of the work that they have done along with the highway department in striping and lines and signage. It's been exhaustive, but what we feel right now is that we've created an environment where people are encouraged to wear a mask, passing each other in the parking lots, entering and exiting the beach, and using either a vendor or the bathrooms. It keeps people at ease. It helps people feel more comfortable using those facilities, but it's not so restrictive that you can't go down and sit on the beach and relax and take your mask off when you're socially distant from other people. So initially, obviously the plan looks good and we have a lot of personnel involved. Memorial Day weekend, as you said, was a soft opening, wasn't that busy. This weekend was busier, more crowds at the beaches. We got a lot of very good compliance and a very good feedback from the community so far. We have a Parks and Recreation employee at the head of the beach. We have lifeguards when you enter and exit the sand, just educating the community, asking them to comply, working with them to keep masks on and explain why it's important for the guidelines that have been put in place from the state, as well as having attendance at the bathrooms. And we have TCOs in every parking lot as well. We have Marine Division working back and forth between the beaches on the sand. And we have police officers that are regularly active, rotating between those areas. So there's a lot of town personnel and resources put in play to ensure the guidelines are being followed safely and that we can continue to keep the beaches open. Obviously, as we get busier and the weather gets warmer, there will be more challenges with parking, with crowds in the parking lots, and with also trying to maintain social distance on the sand within the lifeguard protected areas. People are going to have to spread out. They're going to have to use more of the beach in order to maintain spacing. And you're starting to see more family units come down the beach together. So you're getting 6, 8, and even up to 10 people, which is allowed under the guidelines, kind of congregating. So we're facing some challenges with communicating with those groups to make sure they are together, they are family units, and really just using a soft approach to asking for compliance and asking everyone to do their part to keep the beaches open. So far, so good. There's going to be some challenging areas. We have Indian Wells, Atlantic Avenue, Ditch Plains, and South Edison Beach in Montauk, which are officially open for lifeguard protected beaches right now. Over the next 2 to 3 weeks, as more lifeguards become available and the plan falls into place a little bit better, you'll start to see some of the other beaches open. You'll see the parking lot at Kirk Park. They'll have a beach stand out in front of there. You'll see stands added at Atlantic Avenue, Indian Wells, and Ditch. So the coverage will expand, the crowds will expand. We just hope that the model that's working now will continue to function that well with more people there. That's our goal.
So when somebody, from what I understand it, if I were to walk on one of these beaches, I'd have to have a mask as I enter on the right and as I exit.
Yep.
But what about once I'm on the beach, socially distant? Do you take the mask off?
Yeah, you take the mask off when you're socially distant on the sand and you're just relaxing, enjoying the beach. And we just ask people to be, cognizant of who's around them and how they're passing people. And if you have to get up to go somewhere, you should probably have it with you so that if you can't socially distance, you can put it on. But other than that, enjoy the beach as you normally would.
I would think especially, and the bathrooms. I would think the bathrooms too is a place where you would wear a mask, right? Now, what if somebody is not in compliance? I mean, how stringent is everybody going to be? How can you manage that? If somebody says, look, I'm not wearing a mask, I want to go to the beach and work on my even suntan on my face. Seriously, what do you do with someone like that complying?
Well, right now we really haven't been getting much pushback. The only real issues we're having is entering and exit the parking lots for, surfers at the non-protected beaches where they're putting their wetsuit on and grabbing their board and going straight into the water. We're doing the best we can to spread the message and get that word out, but we also have to be reasonable in understanding that the risk of exposure and the risk of contact in those situations is extremely, extremely low. And if you as an individual are concerned about that person, you can steer clear of them and you can have your mask on. A lot of these guidelines are regulations that are not actually, we can't actually issue a ticket for a lot of these, but there is sections of the town code where if a lifeguard is overseeing the safety of a beach area, in other words, they ask you to turn your music down or they ask you to move your dog and you refuse to comply, there's a section of the town code that we could write a town code summons for failing to comply with the code orders. So that's a worst case scenario. We're really trying to seek voluntary compliance and, we're hoping that doesn't go to that point.
Yeah. I want to touch upon something obviously that's struck the nation and the East End is not immune to, which is these protests over George Floyd and as a police officer. And I've read things that Steve Bellone has said about Suffolk County, how the officers in Suffolk County that was not a right move with him leaning on his, on his neck like that. There were peaceful protests in Riverhead this past Sunday. Tell us take on this in terms of East Hampton, because I understand that there might be some protests coming up in East Hampton. What can you tell us?
I think, sure. I think anyone who wears a uniform and puts on a badge and goes out to protect the community who saw that video was sickened by it. That's obviously not the protocols that we follow, and that's not how we would treat somebody, even in a use of force situation. Um, you know, Many of us put in a great deal of time and effort and a tremendous amount of our own being into treating the public fairly and equitably and creating a positive relationship with the community. And we feel like we have that here on the East End for the most part. Obviously, when you're in law enforcement and you're arresting people or ticketing, there's always some dissension and some, people are not happy with some of the actions we take. But in all honesty, the feedback that we get from our community with the relationship our officers have on the street with all people, regardless of their race or gender or anything, is very positive. We have a very professional police force. We treat the public with the utmost respect. And when these situations happen, they reflect poorly on all of us, and it makes our jobs harder. So not one of us is happy with the events that are going on around the country. We feel terrible about how people of color feel in this circumstance, and we do everything we can to make sure that they don't feel that in their interactions with us on a professional basis. And we support the peaceful protest. However, we do everything we can to ensure that they don't become violent and that, innocent bystanders, business owners, or police officers who are just out trying to do their job to protect the community don't end up being injured and hurt as a result of some of the anger that's coming out of this. So it's very difficult for all of us to watch and see. And we try to really focus down in on the local aspect of this to support our community.
That's great. Locally, I know we have had protests in the past, peaceful demonstrations
Sure.
in East Hampton. What is planned
Yep.
for this coming weekend that you know of?
I do believe on social media I saw that there's a walk protest that's supposed to happen in East Hampton Village, I believe on the 6th. And we've had a tremendous interaction and respect and response to any of the local groups that have protested here. We work with them. We create safe avenues for them. We make sure they feel protected, and everyone has a voice. We facilitate them having that voice peacefully, and it seems to work out well. The organizers typically, when we either meet with them or discuss planning, it's usually very clear that we're speaking out on a national issue and we're all, focused on the same goal. And it's not a protest against our police department. It's a protest against the issues that impact police relations. And we're very respectful of that. And we're looking forward to that going off very well, just as the one in Riverhead did this weekend, very peacefully and very cooperatively,
So
and good message, good voice.
This you think will be
Go
on the
ahead.
6th? What you said, was it Hook Mill to Herrick Park?
I believe so, either that or vice versa.
Okay.
But I understand once the organizers get a permit and they'll start putting out more information, and you'll see it go out locally.
Okay.
But, the East Hampton Village is aware of it. They'll work with their organizers, and we'll help them if needed. But
Right.
we don't anticipate any problems or issues with that event. So.
Yeah. But in terms of the community, in terms of emergencies or just being safe or enjoying the summer, is there any one message that you can put out to people in the town of East Hampton?
I actually there's two. One is that the issues that are going on with the openings of the businesses through the phases is very challenging for all of our local business community, and we understand that. And we just hope everyone understands that we're seeking compliance in our role as a law enforcement agency and trying to help spread the word so that people understand what the businesses can and can't do. And the goal of that is just to continue the safety of the citizens and the health of our residents. It's not to punish those businesses. And we really are trying to work together with them so they understand how to safely reopen their businesses and keep the community moving. It's a very difficult position for us to be in. We know that these business owners have a small window, and that window closes on them with each week that passes, and we sympathize with that, but we have to be even and fair in how we go about sharing those rules and regulations. And then on top of that, it's just as we move forward as a community into the summer, we all just need to be respectful of each other. We need to try to follow the guidelines for social distancing and masks, and respect business owners who ask you to put one on in their business. The governor's order requires that for some of these essential businesses. And we have to use common sense and just try to work together. And it's going to be a very different summer. and we just ask everyone to kind of take a step back and slow down and work together. That's my message.
Wow. Well, we really appreciate you and your department, and the town of East Hampton has had relatively low numbers, like second only to
Absolutely.
Shelter Island, according to Peter Van Spark, which we are
Right.
grateful for. We want to keep it that way. Thank you for keeping us safe and for keeping us, in good standing. And we thank you for joining us again, Chief Michael Sarlo, Town of East Hampton. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Take care.